Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, our viewers in the Asia Pacific region and beyond. Thank you for joining in today's Top Talk with His Excellency Professor Fortunato de la Peña, Secretary, Department of Science and Technology of the Republic of the Philippines. My name is Ha Minh Hiệp, Acting Director General, Directorate for Standard Metrology and Quality in Vietnam, and APO Director for Vietnam. Secretary de la Peña, thank you so much for giving us some your valuable time today. Would you like to greet our viewers?
Yeah, my warmest greetings to everyone, and I hope I can share something that will be of help to them.
Yeah, thank you, Secretary. I will quickly introduce our guest speaker today. Professor Fortunato de la Peña is the Secretary of the Department of Science and Technologies of the Republic of the Philippines. He chaired the ASEAN Committee of Science, Technology and Innovation, COSTI from 2018 to 2019. He also served as the Vice Chair for ASEAN for the UN Commission on Science Technologies for Development from 2010 to 2011, and as the chairs of the 15th UN Commission on Science and Technologies for Development in 2012. He has been the Department on Science Technologies of the Philippines for 24 years. Professor de la Peña is also the author of numerous books and publications on the topics of science, technology, and innovation. In 2021, he was the recipient of the APO Meritorious and Distinguished Award for contribution to productivity in ASEAN Pacific. In this Top Talk, Secretary de la Peña will explain the roles and the contribution of science technologies in addressing the dimension of sustainable development, specifically focusing on the economic development, the social progress, and the environmental protection, while empowering and giving a voice to people to ensure the social inclusion. Example will be shared in his presentation. And after the presentation, there will be an interactive live question and answer section. The viewers, if you have any question, please put them with your name and your country in live chat box, and we will answer as many as time allows. Secretary de la Peña, now I turn the section over to you. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Dr. Yep, and I would like to start my presentation now. Maybe we can have a bigger slide sharing. The title of my presentation is Science and Technology for Inclusive and Sustainable Development. Next slide, please. Okay, my presentation is divided into three components. So this top talk will focus on the following. First is economic and social development. Second is empowerment towards social inclusion. And the third is environmental protection for sustainability and safety. So using science and technology, of course. Next slide. We first tackle economic and social development because this is really very important to achieve inclusion. Next slide, please. I have actually enumerated several subtopics under economic and social development. The first one is direction, coordination, and implementation of research and development, and how we ensure that research and development can help in economic and social development. First, it is important to make science, technology, the country's development plan. In this case, the Philippine Development Plan. Second is to have a research and development agenda that is developed in collaboration with the different R&D players. And in this case, we call it the National Harmonized Research and Development Agenda, or NHRDA. And this is also a part of the Philippine Development Plan. Next slide, please. Now, still under direction, coordination, and implementation of research and development, our research and development agenda can be categorized into five major sectors. First is the basic research component, and then we have research in agriculture, aquaculture, and natural resources. Then we have researches in health and nutrition. Then we have researches in industry, energy, and the emerging technologies. And we also have disaster risk reduction and climate change adaptation as one of the components. Next slide, please. Now, in selecting the research programs and projects that we will implement or we will fund using public money, we use certain criteria. And in our case, we call it the 6 P's and the 2 I's. And I will elaborate on that. We check on the following: what products or technologies will be derived out of the research that will be implemented, what will be the will there be patents and other intellectual property that can be derived out of this, will there be publications that we expect to see out of the research, who will be the people to benefit. They could either be the people who will benefit from the products and technologies that will be derived, or it can be people who will be involved in the research itself, like graduate students who will help in the research and in the process will be able to do publications. And we have also partnerships because it is very important. For example, the potential use of the output of the research can already be partners from the beginning. And then we have the checking of whether the research can help us come up with the useful policies. You know, not all research can produce all of the 6 P's, but we check on in which area they will contribute most. And then we check also on the 2 I's, what will be the economic impact and what will be the social impact of the research. Next slide, please. Now, after the implementation of the research itself, actually we have to be concerned about the use, adoption, and application of the results of the research. And in here, we carry out the following: information dissemination on completed research and development. And we do this on an annual basis where different agencies or different groups or different organizations are invited to present their completed researches in the National R&D Conference. So for example, in our case, we hold it in the month of November. Then we also provide support for intellectual property protection. Then we also have facilities and programs for technology incubation for commercialization, because you know at the end of the research, the output is not yet market ready and it has to go through some kind of incubation testing, for example, in the market before it can be fully commercialized. And then we also conduct what we call the technology transfer fora. We go to different places of the country, gather potential investors, and show them what could be adopted by them, either for commercialization or simply for the use for public good. And of course, we follow our Technology Transfer Act, which provides that the results of R&D should be used. Okay. Then next slide will show us, still on research and development, we also, this is still on economic and social development, we are of course concerned about human resources development in science and technology. This is very essential in making sure that there will be development and growth both economically and socially. So we offer scholarships to ensure the availability of world-class human resources in science, technology, and innovation. Okay, so that they will be the one to carry out the activities in STI. Okay, in the different economic and social sectors. Okay, of course, we need also the human resources for the production sector. Okay, whether it is production in agriculture, aquaculture, in natural resources, in medicals, pharmaceuticals, manufacturing, energy, and those that use the emerging technologies. We also need these human resources, okay, for the services uh, that are needed, okay, um, for services like health and nutrition, like education, human security, disaster risk reduction, and environmental protection. Okay, and also there are human resources that are needed for technopreneurship, for innovative startups, and also for business process outsourcing. Next slide, please. Now, still on human resources development that will support economic and social development, human resource development in science and technology, we also take care. There should be training for workers and managers in the science and technology areas. So people coming from industry need also this training. And we have a program called the Career Incentive Program, wherein some of our scholar graduates, if they want to work on certain projects that are directed by government, they can join us, okay, even only for a few years, okay, to be involved and to use their experience in carrying out R&D. We also have a very unique program called the Patriot Program for Science and Technology Scholars. You know, we support more than 40,000 scholars every year to ensure that they not only finish the program career, but instill in them the sense of responsibility that they have been supported by the state, okay, to finish their degrees, but they also have a responsibility to serve the country and their fellow men. And very recently, we have instituted a Science and Technology Fellows Program. Actually, this is in order to give opportunity for our new PhDs or new MS graduates to work, okay, even if there are no permanent positions involved, but they are willing to work up to 5 years for specific science and technology projects. Next slide, please. Now we move to the second part, which is empowerment towards social inclusion. So we have discussed the first part, which is economic and social development. Now we will talk about empowerment towards social inclusion. Next slide, please. Now, first, I would like to show that we have laws, science and technology laws, in support of social inclusion. And these are mostly in the area of human resource development. For example, we have a law called the Republic Act 1936, which provides that in every region of the country, you know, we are divided into 17 socio-political geographic regions. That in every region of the country, there will be one Philippine Science High School campus. And this is actually a high school for those who are gifted in the science and math areas. Okay. So today we have already 16 of these campuses, and maybe in the near future we will have one for the Bangsamoro Autonomous Region for Muslim Mindanao. And then we have Republic Act 7687. This is the Science and Technology Act of 1994, which ensures the inclusion of talented and deserving students. This is at the college level, whose families socioeconomic status are below the poverty level. And we have proven and we have data to show that every scholar from the poor family that we have helped is able to lift himself and his family out of poverty. We also have Republic Act 10612. This is another scholarship law which provides opportunities for those who may have missed the scholarship in their freshman year. They can still catch up in their third year or junior year, but this is very unique in a way because it provides that upon graduation, they will have to teach in high school science and math. Okay, for the same number of years that they enjoyed the scholarship. This is working pretty well right now. Next slide, please. Next slide. We also have a program called Community Empowerment through Science and Technology. So remember, we are talking of empowerment towards social inclusion. The first one, we tackle the opportunity for our young people, okay, to attain degrees that they have dreamed of. Now, this one is for communities. This is a program for building progressive, resilient, and empowered communities through a package of science and technology interventions. For communities involving the following groups. This is designed for communities involving the following groups. First, the geographically isolated and disadvantaged communities. The Philippines, having more than 7,000 islands, you can expect that there are a big number of communities that are considered to be geographically isolated. And we also talk about communities with conflicts, as well as special groups like women's organizations, indigenous peoples, and other marginalized communities. And we introduce a package of science and technology interventions that are basic. For example, one is health and nutrition, potable water, and food that will address malnutrition. We help them in the area of education, like providing access to materials. Okay, we have a special product for that, our Star Books, wherein you have more than 100 collection of books or publications that can be accessed even yes, okay? Because this is already through CDs available. And of course, livelihood is very important. So once we have made sure that health and nutrition, education are addressed, then we introduce livelihood, which very often involves technology. And then we have environmental protection and disaster risk reduction as interventions also. Next slide, please. Next slide. Still on empowerment towards social inclusion. I have talked about young people. I have talked about communities. Here, we also have a program for inclusion, particularly for micro, small, and medium-scale enterprises. Okay, so we have one long-running program, our Small Enterprises Technology Upgrading Program, and this is a program which enables our micro, small, and medium enterprises to be able to acquire hardware and software that they think will upgrade their technology, expand their capacity, improve their capabilities, quality, and their productivity. And they pay later, okay, at very reasonable terms. The next one is actually a program for the government units. This is good governance through data science and decision support system program. We call it our goddess program. And this is intended towards enabling our local government units and even our national government agencies to improve services to the public using data-driven governance and artificial intelligence. So some of the examples of the areas covered would be in the area of mobility, energy management, e-governance, citizen services, waste management, water management, and others. Next slide, please. Next slide is still on productivity programs through technology. You have heard our program for micro, small, and medium enterprises, and here we have our grassroots innovation for inclusive development program, or what we call our grind program. And this is concerned with the generation of niche adapted solutions capitalizing on local knowledge and resources. This involves the development of innovations, products, processes, or technologies created by people from the countryside, usually due to necessity or challenges. Next slide, please. Still on empowerment towards social inclusion, we have, as early as 2017, introduced uh, a relatively big and innovative program, our Science for Change program, or S4CP. And this is intended to promote inclusive innovation by addressing the disparity in R&D funding distribution in the country's socio-political geographic regions. It provides an enabling platform where government, academia, and industry in the country collectively pursue market-oriented research, and it involves the introduction of new programs in areas like defense and security, space science and technology, artificial intelligence, and the strengthening of research and development and science and technology services in the regions. Next slide, please. Our Science for Change program, next slide, has four components. The first one is what we call the niche centers in the regions for R&D. We help uh, the higher educational institutions and research and development units of national government agencies to put up what we call niche centers. Okay, very shall we say very focused on very specific areas. Okay, but giving the best, okay, in terms of R&D and technology. And this is complemented by our R&D leadership or RD lead program, where we dispatch national experts. These are Philippine-based experts to different parts of the country who need their expertise, their services, so that they can put up their own research centers in the regions. Then we have the collaborative research and development to leverage the Philippine economy, or the Cradle program. This is really a program to encourage our enterprises to carry out R&D that they need to solve their problems or to come up with innovative products, technologies, and processes in collaboration with the researchers in the academe or in the research and development institutes. So the enterprise identifies the problem or the objective of the research. They identify the partner implementer, which will be either a university or a research institute, and we contribute something so that the research project will be able to reach completion that will have useful results. And then the last one here is what we call business innovation through science and technology for industry. And this is what we call the BIST program. This is something similar to our small enterprises technology upgrading program, in the sense that we make available resources so that they can acquire hardware and software to put up their research facilities within their enterprises, but they have to repay it in very reasonable terms. Next slide, please. Just to give you a glimpse of what our niche research centers are, so far we have already helped put up 41 niche research centers in practically all regions of the country. And just to give you an example, I picked out the 10 which are taken, which will represent the different sectors. So, like in agriculture and natural resources, we have a freshwater fisheries Research and Development Center in our Region 2. This is Northern Luzon, focusing on freshwater eel and a special kind of fish which we call dulong. Ludong. And we have a biodiversity R&D center in Region 7. This is in Central Visayas. Okay. We have a Center for Environmental Informatics also in Region 7 in Central Visayas. We have a Seaweed R&D center in the Bangsa Moro Autonomous Region of Muslim Mindanao in Tawi-Tawi in BARM. And we have a Center for Environmental Technologies and Compliance. This is in the Metro Manila area or the National Capital Region. Another center is for sustainable polymers. This is in Northern Mindanao in Region 10, based at the Mindanao State University in Iligan City. And then we have a Coastal Engineering Research Center in Region 1. This is the Ilocos region in the north, and a Biomaterials for Diagnostics and Therapeutics R&D Center in Region 3, which is Central Luzon, and a Neurorobotics R&D Center also in NCR in Luzon. Okay. Now let's move to the next slide. Next slide, please. We moved from the first one was was economic and social development. The second one was inclusion, social inclusion, and the third one is environmental protection for sustainability and safety. Next slide, please. Here, the first one that I would like to present is our emphasis and priority given for R&D that is focused on sustainable development goals. I have identified here 7 which are heavily dependent on science and technology. And let me just read them. Research and development for sustainable development goal number 6, which is to ensure availability and sustainable management of water and sanitation. R&D for SDG 7, which is to ensure access to affordable, reliable, sustainable, and modern energy. SDG 9, build resilient infrastructure, promote inclusive and sustainable industrialization, and foster innovation. SDG number 11, make cities and human settlements inclusive, resilient, and sustainable. Next slide, please. SDG 13, take urgent action to combat climate change and its impacts. SDG 14, conserve and sustainably use the oceans, seas, and marine resources for sustainable development. SDG 15, protect, restore, and promote sustainable use of terrestrial ecosystems, sustainably manage forests, combat desertification, and halt and reverse land degradation, and halt biodiversity loss. I would like to show you something that I'm proud of. The calendar that we would like to distribute for 2022 is actually based on artwork showing our sustainable development goals. So let me just do a quick sharing of this artwork. Is it possible? Go ahead. Please show it. It's not yet shown in our screen. Just a moment. Is it possible? Not yet. Huh? May delay. Anyway, I would just like to share some pieces of artwork that will be displayed in our calendar. It is okay. Anyway, it might be difficult to share the artwork. So in case it is ready later on, then we can share it. Let me move on to the next slide. After the SDGs, Uh, okay, so we just go back to these slides I have been presenting. If we cannot show the pieces of artwork. Anyway, sorry for the delay. It's not shown here in our screen. It's only in your screen. Anyway, get me back to these slides for the lecture. We are in this slide after the SDGs. It's not showing. Okay. So anyway, it is here already. Please turn to the next slide after the Science for Change program. Can you switch it to the next slide? And then we have the examples of our NEET research centers. And then next slide, please. I was already talking of environmental protection. Okay, I mentioned about the SDG, R&D. The next slide, still on the SDGs. And then the next slide on environmental protection and sustainability. For sustainability and safety is building resilience to disaster risk and climate change. Here, I would like to mention our efforts at modernizing our Weather Bureau, Pag-asa, involving not only the modernization of equipment but also the upgrading of human resources and of course R&D and model development for improved forecasting. We also have developed georisk apps, and this was done by our Philippine Institute for Volcanology and Seismology. They developed the following as examples. The PVolts fault finder, okay, which helps you identify where the faults are located. We have the GeoRisk PH integrated database system, which actually contains the different kinds of georisk and where they are located. We have the hazard hunter PH, which is also an app that will help you, okay, to determine what kind of hazards are associated with a particular area uh, coupled with this GeoMapper PH app. And the last one would be the spectral acceleration maps of the Philippines, where we have already developed, or through PBOX, 9 atlases for 9 cities of the Philippines. And the goal is to have more of these atlases for the different locations or cities. And this is very helpful and really was very much welcome by our structural engineers. Next slide, please. Still on building resilience to disaster risk and climate change, we have also the design, development, and setting up of space systems and facilities to utilize space technologies for remote monitoring of environmental conditions. Next slide, please. Still on environmental protection for sustainability and safety, the development and use of waste management technologies to protect the environment and to ensure people's safety. So we have projects involving waste reduction, waste reuse, or what we call the circular economy, and waste recycling. I guess we have shown practically all. Now let's move to the next slide. It is already summing up, okay, the three major areas which I presented: social, economic and social development, social inclusion, and environmental protection towards sustainability and safety. So science and technology has a big role in addressing the dimensions of sustainability, particularly in relation to economic and social development, in empowerment toward social inclusion, and in the protection of the environment for sustainability and safety. That ends my presentation. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you very much, Secretary De La Pena. Thank you for a very insightful presentation. And you explained the role and the contribution of science technologies for sustainable, inclusive development truly, which are very relevant to the work of our APO, especially through productivity improvement. Obviously, access to new appropriate technologies will promote a steady improvement in living condition and drive productivity gain, in which turn can ensure the rising income. So I'd like to remind the viewer that if you have any question for the secretary, so you can post them in the live chat box, and I will ask them on their behalf. And again, I want to emphasize that this top talk will focus on following three sections. The first is economic and social development. The second is empowerment towards social inclusion. And the first is environmental protection for sustainable and safety. Thank you very much, Secretary De La Pena. Now let's start with the question. Okay, so the first question is, how can we make the science and technologies more inclusive at the overall society level within the country, especially in developing country? Yeah, thank you.
Yes. First of all, one of the things that we can do is to work with our scientists in all areas. Okay. When I say all areas, whether they are in agriculture, whether they are in energy, or whether they are in environment. Okay. All of these have to be worked on with our scientists, and we also have to make sure that we have the human resources. Okay, who can be drawn from all sectors of society, whether particularly those who are coming from the poor sector and who wants to participate by becoming scientists and engineers. And of course, productivity is really the key, and we need science and technology for productivity.
Yeah, thank you, Secretary. Yes, I also agree with you that the human resources is also very important. Yeah, very important part for our science technology strategies. So the second question is there a great divide between and among countries in terms of adopting advance in science and technologies? Can you show your comment with us?
Yeah, I think there is really a divide, but this is really brought about by the level of economic development of the country. So it's like a chicken and egg situation. Okay, the if you have a low level of development, it really acts as some kind of a constraint. Okay, in terms of really improving and making use of advances in science and technology. But the availability of human resources can also be a source of the divide. Okay, and that's why we are addressing that particular aspect of developing human resources.
Okay, thank you, Secretary. So we received the comment from our viewers that it's still possible to show the image that the Secretary would like to show after the questionnaire part. So I think it is possible if you have any comment on the Secretary's slide. So the next question is, how do key players like the public sector, private sector, and citizens play roles in and contribute to progress in science technologies. So can you share
Yeah.
with? Yeah.
Each of these group has their roles to play. The public sector, of course, is very important in terms of setting policies and directions on how science and technology can be used to improve the lives of their citizens. And of course, it needs the investments coming from the public sector. Now, on the part of the private sector, their role really is really to um, uh, make use of improvements in technology, knowledge of science and technology, so that they can become more competitive, and in so doing can improve their productivity, gain more income, employ more people, okay, which will again help the country's development. And in terms of citizens, I think what is important is to be first aware that science and technology plays an important role in their lives, okay? Not only in their jobs, but also even in their personal well-being. Health is important, nutrition is important, and these things we have to know, and we have to learn the science that is the basis for this.
Yeah, thank you for your answer. So from your presentation, you talk about the use and the adoption, the application of R&D result. You talk about the human resources development, the science technology law, the productivity program through the technology, the community empowerment. So how do you feel? What are the main challenges for the developing countries when it's come to science, technology, and innovation? Yeah, please.
Well, first of all, I think uh, to benefit from science and technology, you also have to invest. Okay, and this is really one of the major challenge of developing countries. Okay, in most instances, the resources or the funds that are allocated for science and technology is very small, because they have to give priority to more basic needs like education, housing, etc. And very little is left for science and technology and research and development. So these inputs, okay, is a main challenge. And the other challenge, of course, is to find people in the country, I mean local people, who are willing to take the risk by adopting new technology, and by putting in some capital for new technology that will improve their operations. And I think this is important, particularly since we are living in a global economy, and you have to be able to compete with the rest of the world.
Yeah, I also agree with you. Yeah, the local people is also very important factors because to adopt the technologies, adopt the science technologies, not only the technical, we also need to understand about the culture of the country. Yeah, right. The behavior or the social issues. Yes, and local people is also very important factors. So could you elaborate on the relationship between the science technologies and achieving sustainable development? Yeah, please.
Well, when we talk of development, we are really talking of meeting the needs, okay, of our people, and making progress, okay. But we have to make sure that our that nature's gifts are also protected, our environment, our natural resources, and we also have to make sure that the investments that we make, okay, will have long-term benefits or returns. We should think not only of ourselves. When we talk of sustainable development, we have to think of the generations that will follow.
Yeah, so that's the reason that in your presentation you talk about the R&D focus on the sustainable development goal.
Yes.
Yeah, I think with the 7 SDGs. Yeah, very good, very good and good information for us. So could you share with us under the current COVID-19 pandemic, what do you see as the main roles of science, technology, and innovation in helping to constant it? Yeah, please share with us.
Yes, what I will say here is based on our own experience in the Philippines and our experience at the Department of Science and Technology in helping our country address the pandemic. The first one that I could mention is to have science as the basis for decision making at the top level. And here, our one of our breakthroughs is the very fast development of a disease model, which we're able to accomplish because we have already developed other disease models before COVID-19 came. So we have already a disease model for dengue, a disease model for other diseases, uh, leptospirosis, etc., typhoid fever. And so it came in easy to come up with a disease model
Hello, Doctor. Yeah, Secretary. Okay, maybe the internet connection. Yeah, so I think yeah, for viewers, so I think that from the secretary presentation, yes, under COVID-19 pandemics, I also share in the Vietnam case. Yeah, right. So we are also talking about the how we can apply the digital platform. So I mean, it's a result of science, technology, and innovation. How we can share the digital data, how we can apply the digital platform to elaborate the science technologies and to achieve the sustainable development. Yeah, it's also one of the very important issues. And also compare with yeah, I just want to a little bit compare the policy related to the science technology policy from Vietnam and Philippines. Yeah, with the in Vietnam case, we are now prepare the draft strategies for science technology and innovation until 2030. This yeah, this strategy will be shared with the other province in Vietnam. Okay, Secretary, welcome back. Yeah, sorry. Yeah, can you continue? Sorry, maybe the technical connection from the secretary side. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. The second one that is very important is to have the system that will detect, okay, the emission, and that is why
Maybe yeah. Sorry, the viewer. So we get a technical how to say problem from the Philippine side. So we received one question from the viewers. So are small farming unit more sustainable compared to the large unit? So I think this question will be sent to secretary very soon.
yeah, yeah. Uh, I am back. Okay.
Okay.
My enumeration of our role. Okay. So the other thing, of course, is
Okay, maybe because of the COVID-19 pandemic contaminate to our
the
internet
vaccines
connection.
that will be. Me? Can you hear me?
Yeah, sorry, a little bit difficult to hear from you. Can you a little bit repeat your answers and share for the viewers? Hello? Okay. Okay, while we are waiting, secretary back to the stage. So I also want to share the one question from also from viewers. So the question is how science technologies currently empower people especially the disadvantaged group in different sector. So I think these are one of the very advantage strategies from the policies, Philippine policy on science technologies, that their policies from the secretary presentation. So I think their policy is shared for the all people and for the all sector in the countries. Not only focus on some special issue, they focus and they sharing their value for all people. Yeah, even this disadvantaged group or advantaged group and different sector and with the all level. So you can see from his slide, for the R&D focus on the sustainable development goals. So Philippines, they focus on the seven sustainable development goals. For example, SDG 6 related to the water and sanitation. SDG 7 to relate to the sustainable and energies, how to we can save energy with the green energies. For the SDGs 9 related to the infrastructures and industrials with the innovation. Yeah. And another SDG also, the Department of Science and Technology of the Philippines, they also help the government to support and to cover to improve the role of science technologies. Okay, thank you, Secretary. Can you hear me?
Yes, yes, I go quick.
Okay,
The first
okay.
one that I was saying is the importance of science-based decision making, and here disease modeling came in very handy. Second one is in the detection of the infection by way of diagnostic kits. The third one, of course, is in the area of developing therapeutics. Okay, that can help relieve our patients. And the fourth one is in the area of coming up with biomedical devices so that it helps actually when there is a shortage of health workers, when we want to reduce the contact between health workers and patients, and of course our preparation in terms of setting up our genome center in three parts of the country have been very useful, particularly now that we do sequencing, genome sequencing to detect variants. So these are examples of how science and technology can help in the containment of the pandemic.
So we received one question from the viewers. So, sir, are small farming units more sustainable compared to the large unit? Can you share about your comment?
Can you repeat the question?
Yeah, you
Please
can see
please
also
repeat,
from
Dr. Chip.
yeah. Okay, also you
Ah,
can see
yeah.
also from yeah. Are small farming units are more sustainable as compared to the large units?
Okay, so this is actually something which our agriculture people will be in a better position to talk about. But there are really certain instances where the application of technology would require some economies of scale. In other words, bigger units to introduce the changes and the technologies. But there are also certain cases that small units are workable. So, for example, when we are now talking of aquaculture, when we are talking of native livestock that we are doing right now, the small farmer holders are actually benefiting much from these technologies.
Yeah, thank you, Secretary. That question from Narin Depan Singh, one of our viewer today. So may I move to the another question that what are your specific recommendation for leveraging science technologies to enhance productivity now? Yeah, please.
Well, my first recommendation is very consistent with our Science for Change program. We need to involve the researchers in the different parts of the country, not only in the places where you have the big universities. Okay, so that they can actually address problems that are unique in their regions. They can take advantage of the potentials of the regions and do their R&D in relation to this. The second one is, of course, by way of making our enterprises do R&D and adopt technologies. And in most instances, research organization, if they partner with a university, if they partner with a research institute, I think this is best done through collaboration. And lastly, I think our strategy now of deploying our experts, okay, located in certain parts of the country, bringing them to other parts of the country has been helping a lot. And our program for returning Filipino scientists is working very well. So we have been attracting our Filipino scientists based abroad to come and help us here. And a very concrete example is our recent announcement of setting up the Virology and Vaccine Institute. Immediately, we had 7 scientists from the US, from UK, from Australia who have volunteered to help right away.
Okay, thank you very much for your very valuable recommendation. So yes, that's the reason in 2021. So Secretary de la Pena, he received the APO Meritorious and Distinguished Award from APO for the contribution to the productivity in the ASEAN Pacific. So congratulations for that honor prize from APO. And yeah, so thank you so much for sharing your views and experience on the topics of science technologies for inclusive and sustainable development. I am sure that our viewers have learned a lot from this section, especially from your question and answer section. Very, how to say, interactive discussion. And we will be thinking about how sustain and how we can expand the concept of inclusiveness in society so that everyone will benefit, yes, and no one will be left behind when it comes to talking advance of the progress in science technologies. So before the top talk is over, do you have any final word for our viewers? Secretary, please.
Well, first of all, I think we have to keep in mind that productivity is very essential for our sustainability and development. You know, if we do not address, for example, losses, okay, in our production system, that will bring our productivity down. Okay, if we do not address the inefficiencies in our systems, it will bring our productivity down. And I think it has something to do with sustainability. Like if we use too much raw materials when we can use only something less, okay, that helps us preserve our natural gifts, our natural resources. So as I said earlier in my talk, when we talk of sustainability, let us not talk of progress for our sake. I mean, this time only, let us think of progress that our next generations will also enjoy. Thank you very much, and I hope you learned something from my presentation.
Okay, thank you, Secretary Fortunato de la Pena. Yes, from your sharing today, we understand that technologies have a big role, very big role in addressing the dimension of sustainability, particularly in the relationship with the economic and social development. Yeah, thank you very much. And we really appreciate having you here today, Secretary de la Pena. Viewers, thank you for joining us, and I hope that you have learned a lot from this talk. And please stay safe, well out there, everyone, and thank you for tuning in. Thank you very much. Bye bye. See you. Thank you.
Bye bye, Dr. Hip.
Yeah. Thank you very much for joining us. Yeah. And thank you, everyone.